Brenton and Tammy Panner are used to problem solving on their property northwest of Dubbo, especially when it's in drought. But even they were tested when trying to access the federal government's farm household allowance.
It's a pretty strict criteria. I don't wish to bag the government, but they're making things hard, that's for sure.
The country's drought coordinator, a military man used to bureaucracy, was himself perplexed by the paperwork.
Yeah, you know, one of the things is soldiers have a master's degree and it's filling in forms. So I took the farm household allowance form and I got stuck not too far into it.
Around 26,000 farmers are eligible for the assistance, but just 8,000 have received it since the scheme began in 2014. Centrelink extended its opening hours in Dubbo over the weekend to try to help. Former financial councillor Jim Claringbold is among the applicants. Centrelink extended its opening hours in Dubbo over the weekend to try to help. Former financial councillor Jim Claringbold is among the applicants. He says there's too much onus on those seeking assistance to prove their eligibility. He's got another idea to speed things up.
Give him the money and then figure out afterwards how much he's got to pay you back through his taxation.
Attempts have already been made to streamline the application process, but farmers say this has barely scratched the surface of what's needed.
So far, 30% of the questions have been scrapped and eligibility has been relaxed. A review of the scheme isn't expected to be completed until the first half of next year.
That's ridiculous. There's people that are, finding it difficult to put food on the table.
The Panners believe assessors should be coming to farmers, not the other way round.
Because people just don't have the time. They really don't.
A tough job made even tougher. Claudia Jambor, ABC News. Farmer Rob McGutcheon has seen droughts come and go for decades. He says the conditions on his property at Trangie, west of Dubbo right now, are unlike anything he's had to deal with before.
So this is the first time that we're running into a second year without planting. At the same time, though, there are a lot of people in New South Wales that are in a lot worse situation than what we are here in Trangie.
The Premier visited another property in the region today to announce a $600 million drought relief package.
People say to me, we don't want a handout, we just want to get through this difficult period, and we're responding to that.
The package includes $250 million for one-off loans of up to $50,000, which will be interest-free for 7 years. Farmers will be able to use the borrowed money to buy feed, move livestock, and to preserve animal bloodlines by freezing their genetic material. There's $25 million for new weather monitoring equipment and $4 million towards mental health services, including counselling. The government will also allow more culling of kangaroos.
While the measures announced by the Premier today were welcomed by some, others say the government needs to be looking at alternative ways to support farmers that don't saddle them with debt.
Rob McCutcheon's daughter-in-law, Mandy, says for those hardest hit, loans are not the answer.
What they really need right now is subsidies for freight, for fodder, and actual subsidies for the fodder itself.
But the suggestion of subsidies is something the Deputy Premier doesn't support.
Firstly, distorts the market. It pushes freight prices and feedstock prices up. At the same time, a lot of people have destocked, and this is about now the next stage.
The government is trying to reassure farmers that the assistance can be tailored, but as they stare down a dry winter, for some, this may not be enough. Claudia Jambor, ABC News, Collie. When Burke councillor Sarah Barton went to enrol one of her children in care, she was reminded of the town's predicament when it comes to doctors.
You can't name your family doctor here because there's such like a continual flow of different locums coming in and coming out.
In addition to this sense of frustration, there are other consequences. When Burke recently lost its only permanent doctor, it meant that sexual assault examinations could no longer be performed in town.
It's such an important piece of medical support. We need to provide those, so we'll absolutely be looking to have our doctors trained up if they're willing and able to provide that important service.
Members of Burke's large Indigenous community say the absence of an ongoing doctor is a big problem for their elders.
If they're hard of hearing and they've got to repeat, that's very frustrating for them, and they would rather just not go to a doctor.
On average, doctors will spend 3 years in the bush before relocating. Bringing in a locum as a substitute for a permanent doctor costs around $2,000 a day.
Just normal breathing. Yeah.
Brisbane GP Freddie McSherry regularly visits Burke and is a defender of the locum system.
We try to bridge the gap between this doctor and that doctor and offer the service that is really first-class service in an area like Burke.
The town says steps taken so far to encourage doctors to come to Burke and stay here haven't gone far enough, and without greater incentives, the problem will only get worse.
And isn't that our basic right now, that we should have health services that are available all the time?
The local healthcare provider says a new permanent doctor is expected to start next month, with a second doctor to follow. Claudia Jambor, ABC News, Burke.